We know that the men and women who have carried us on to the space frontier are people of great strength of character, who are willing to face the dangers involved in the space program so that our future and the future of our children and their children may be assured. The rewards to mankind and this nation that exist on that frontier are believed by each of them to be worth the risks.
We have grown to take for granted enormous technical events such as this, and we have grown to assume that nothing will ever happen, and we had hoped this one would never happen, but it did. I'm hopeful that it doesn't totally dampen our spirit and enthusiasm for experimental things and for outer space activities, because they are absolutely necessary.
This is a day of sadness that we will never forget. We will, however, Mr. Speaker, go on with our space program. We will pursue our dream to live and work in space, to push back the limits of our knowledge in the vast sea of space. But wherever we go, we will carry in our hearts the memory of those courageous men and women who died today so suddenly and so unexpectedly. God bless them and their families in this tragic hour.
And of course, in watching our live coverage, you know that there's not full unanimity on the continuation of the space program, the wisdom thereof. Charles Hayes, Democrat from Illinois, indicated that it is time to pray for guidance, to pray for those who died today, and he wondered aloud whether or not, for example, robots might not be used. The House of Representatives says it will conduct a complete investigation of the accident after NASA finishes its report.
The next major event in about 9 minutes will be a briefing from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration from the Kennedy Space Center, where offshore the recovery efforts are continuing. The last information we received from Lieutenant Colonel Robert Nicholson was that floating debris has been turned up. We know no more than that. We hope to learn more in about 8.5 or 9 minutes when NASA briefs us from Cape Canaveral. Joining us now in San Francisco, Dr. Carol Rosen, who is president for the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space. That is a group determined to find and pursue peaceful enterprises in space. Dr. Rosen is opposed to the president's proposed space defense initiative. We know now, Dr. Rosen, that it perhaps will be several months before the space shuttle program will be again revived, pending an investigation of today's tragedy. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think this gives us a very important and tragic pause in history, but one in which we can now further analyze and really consider how we're going to be developing the space frontier. These are the pioneers, these are the heroes today who were so tragically killed, but they knew the risks involved in pioneering this new frontier, and there are many of us who are concerned about how we evolve into space. Now the focus and attention has been brought to space in a most unusual way. We see both the tragedy and the opportunities that are going to be made available to us as the result of further analysis of the situation. And I think now it's going to bring even more to the attention, especially of the American public, the fact that the Strategic Defense Initiative is based upon this high-tech computerized technology, which is not flawless, and that putting us on a 1-second hair-trigger decision-making time based upon such computers as to whether to determine from a satellite computer whether a launch is an enemy launch or not and fire or not is a very, very high risk. And why should we be researching this kind of weapon system or defensive system, as it's called, that wouldn't protect anyone? And why don't we now put in our full attention to tuning in our minds and to further fine-tuning our technologies so that as we evolve into this frontier, fewer and fewer tragic accidents will happen and more opportunities will be provided.
You said this is an important pause for the space program. Are you not concerned about the advances being made in medicine and the like? This may irreparably harm certain phases of the space shuttle program.
I don't believe that it will irreparably harm any phases of the space program. In fact, I think it can only enhance, in an odd sort of way, what we're doing. we now know that we have life at stake, and this kind of explosion can happen at any moment based upon the nuclear weapons that we have on Earth, by any number of other tragic events that could happen, from epidemics to water problems to health problems. And we now see the instantaneousness of life itself. And the space program represents higher technology and higher consciousness. With this event now that happened today, we have a pause to see how space technology and its applications can be advanced. And we can focus now on how we can apply this technology to solving problems of Earth, to creating more jobs, profits if people are interested, which is hard to talk about under these sensitive circumstances, a new kind of security system that in fact is based on cooperative technology. This also shows me that this is a time when we need to be pooling our resources with the rest of the world who are also moving into this space area, so that we can find out what kinds of problems other people are experiencing around the world and what kinds of solutions they're finding. And space gives us this opportunity. This unfortunate event makes it possible now for all of us to see that this is the time in history that we need to redirect all of the funding and resources available to us to developing this frontier, to converting the Earth weapons industry into a space industry and other industries without weapons in it, to enhancing this kind of technology, especially the computers, communication, and information that's going to be made available to us as a result of this analysis.
All right.
And about the time that we have right now to apply ourselves to evolving into space peacefully, cooperatively, and to recognizing these pioneers as heroes.
All right, Dr. Rosa, we thank you so much for stopping by to share your thoughts with us. We're going to have to jump now to Stuart Lurie, who's on the line from Moscow with a reaction to today's tragedy at the Kennedy Space Center. Stuart.
Well, first of all, I don't think that there is going to be any gloating over this in the Soviet Union. This accident occurred after working hours here, but I have already received a telephone call from a friend of mine in Tbilisi, the capital of Soviet Georgia, many thousands of miles away. And he called because he had heard of this on Soviet television, and he wanted to express his sympathies to me and to the American people. The Soviet people learned very quickly of the disaster. TASS, the official news agency, reported the tragedy a half hour after it happened. And then the main evening news show, Vremya, showed the liftoff and the explosion less than 2 hours after it happened. And the narrator used very grave tones, the kind of tones that they usually reserve respectfully for obituaries of important officials here. He told his viewers that there are practically no chances that any of the crew members survive. He pointed out that the shuttle had no ejection systems for his crew. He also talked about the mission of the Challenger, to place a communication satellite into orbit and also instruments to observe Halley's Comet. The Soviets have an unmanned spacecraft, 2 of them in fact, that will be flying by Halley's Comet in early March and taking photographs of it.
All right, Stuart, we want to move along. We're expecting in a matter of moments from the Kennedy Space Center a briefing by NASA. We want to tell you about the explosion of the shuttle Challenger, which happened just a minute or so into its launch, 72 seconds after launch to be precise. We're going to take a look now at a routine shuttle launch of the shuttle Atlantis last October and have that compared to today's tragic launch of Challenger.
Engine start, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Control program.
Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading downrange. Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles for most of the flight, 104%. We'll throttle down to 65% shortly. Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. We'll Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles. Engines throttling up. 3 engines now at 104%.
Challenger, go with throttle up.
Challenger, go with throttle up.
1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles. Controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction. We have no downlink.
And again, to bring you up to date on what's happening, NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is conducting a recovery effort in the Atlantic Ocean off the Cape, and we are expecting further information from NASA at any time now. They had a scheduled 4 o'clock Eastern Time news conference. The President of the United States, who was brought up to date on the explosion of Challenger this morning, made an arrangement with the Congress to cancel tonight's scheduled State of the Union address. It's been rescheduled for next week now. The President will address the country in 1 hour, about 5 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll be bringing that to you live as events continue to develop in relation to this morning's national tragedy, the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger, apparently killing all 7 aboard. Challenger carried 6 trained astronauts into space and the 1 civilian New Hampshire schoolteacher Sharon Christa McAuliffe.